I mean, I think we can get started. I think it's going to be a small but mighty group of us, and I'm super pumped. I feel very lucky to be with the two of you, Kansas superstars. And so, I guess, um, yeah, are you guys cool with getting started?
Sure.
Yep.
Awesome. All right. Well, hi everybody who's here. I'm Mara Sanchez. I'm Programs Director at the Alliance, and I am going to let my two amazing colleagues from Kansas introduce themselves. Macy, do you want to go first?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I am Macy Pickman. I am the Director of Education for Kansas Department of Corrections. So I oversee all education that's happening within the Department of Corrections, so post-secondary, adult ed, any fun things like that. And this has kind of fallen under us too, as we're trying to work on education to employment pathways. That's kind of one of our big goals. In Kansas, we have a focus on employment, and getting good high wage positions available.
I'm Jennifer Brunenn. I'm the education coordinator for the Kansas Department of Corrections, and I oversee technology for our students in our 8 facilities across Kansas. Educational technology, software, devices, things like that.
Perfect. Macy, do you want to start off and just talk a little bit about how you and Jen as well, or Jen can also speak too. I think that would make more sense. Talk a little bit about how you became involved with this work.
Yeah, so it kind of was a whirlwind. So we are very lucky in Kansas in the fact that we have support from the top down. Generally speaking, for a lot of our initiatives, they come from like upper leadership and then they're starting to push them down. So Jen and I's boss, Dr. Chris Fanning, she was actually the education director before me. And so her and Ved had happened to meet at a conference. They were talking. And that's kind of how this whole brainchild between Ved and Chris got started. And then from there, Jen and I were kind of tasked with how do we implement this process? What does that look like? How should we go about doing this? So it made sense. We have the technology kind of in place from the education side, and we don't have the employment or the technology set up on the employment side yet. So we decided to run it through education because we already had some of the platforms there. In the middle of the project, we realized that our technology was a little bit too secure. So we had to do a few pivotings. And so we've only ran this process once. We did get a new fellow selected. And so we're excited to start the process again and keep working out kinks and trying to figure out what exactly this works for. So I can let Jen talk about how our initial technology plan went and then how we pivoted once or twice.
Amazing.
Yeah, sure. So, like Macy said, we did have technology already set up. We have a resident Wi-Fi network that we have in all of our facilities, and we've set this up for education. We've got secure devices that only connect to certain sites that we'd like them to connect to. And so we just saw that as an opportunity to be able to partnership with the Alliance because we already had some of those things in place. Um, it was pretty simple to get started. We have Blackboard, which is an LMS that we were going to start using for our resident to do her remote work. And we decided that her remote work needed to be a little more in depth, so we did pivot. But I don't know if that answers your first question, Mara, if you want to dive deeper into that later, all of
Yeah,
the bells and whistles that we set up.
it's funny. I actually had forgotten until recently about the whole like Blackboard, and I think just wanted to point out there that that was just it's so part and parcel of this work, right? Especially when it comes to, you're raising a lot of issues right now. You're raising the issue of as corrections agencies, you have to balance protecting public safety the huge liability that comes with technological access, right? That was introduced with COVID and how education programming needed to be delivered remotely. And so in trying to implement work-based learning opportunities, coming up against that, gosh, we want to make sure things are still secure. We have these things in place for a reason, but also people can't get the work that they need to get done. So like what, and just, kind of on the fly, like you said, pivoting, figuring out, is this, I mean, we were down for blackboards, like,
Yeah,
this is
we were.
you're talking about a fellow that was placed as a work placement with the Alliance. And we were ready to go with Blackboard and using that as a way to work with this intern or with this fellow. But as you said, it became quickly apparent that that wasn't the best way to go. And just let's try it. And sort of with this small pilot of the pilot study of one person, being able to say, let's try it, doesn't have as much, I would say, risk as, if you're trying to do 20 students and working on a new technology. So I love that you brought that up, even though it is a little bit granular, because I think it speaks to sort of the bigger issues at play when it comes to corrections and trying to navigate implementing work-based learning opportunities.
Yeah, and security was a big one for us. But
Yeah,
we wanted to make sure that it was not only secure for public, but also secure for our resident. There are so many things out there. But yeah, we did pivot and it ended up working beautifully. The resident that was chosen was available for work release. So she was able to get a email address and do a little bit more than some of our other residents can when it comes to internet access.
awesome.
Yeah, like Jen said, so we do have a state statute that we are allowed or the Secretary of Corrections is actually allowed to grant privilege for individuals to leave our correctional facilities if they have work release status. So we kind of use that as a gray area to where they're leaving for remote work essentially. And so we could kind of grant her some of those privileges that she would get if she was working off site because her job is not like in the facility itself. So we kind of navigated some gray area and asked for forgiveness later to be able to kind of be able to work with that. Um, so we ended up, like Jen said, able to get her like kind of more of a regular laptop. She was supervised. We're trying to work out the kinks for the new process because we did get a new fellow selected. And so we need to kind of figure out how all of that works. But that was how we used policy, or we used a statute was our secretary is allowed to allow somebody to go on work release. We have only tried this on our lowest custody level. We got to work out the kinks to be able to get all of that figured out before we go bigger. But our new fellow is also going to be on the same custody level to where we can grant some of those privileges.
Amazing. I feel like so we should pause for a second here because we're going to start getting into real detail stuff. And I see people have questions in the chat, and we are going to get to those questions as well because those are really the meat and potatoes of what we're trying to do here with this webinar. But first, Kareen was set up this beautiful technology for us to play with and interact with. So I figured let's use it. Let's see if we like it. And try it out. I'm going to share my screen. And I was told what to do. I have to say present. So is everybody seeing this? I got to go back.
Yep.
So what we did is we created this mural board, which is just like interactive sticky notes. And we pre-populated it from the guide. And this is all based on this guide that Tori and Lali and Leo, who wasn't in the panel, were, this foundational document that they put together, and Ved, myself, and another woman helped, finish off and bring to a final product. So this is some of the benefits in the corrections section that were listed. And I wonder, for you folks, Jen and Macy, in looking at some of the benefits that were already listed in the guide, Do these benefits ring true for you? And of course, are there more that you would want to add, little sticky notes here, just to add on to this from your personal experience of implementing work-based learning opportunities in Kansas?
I
Yeah,
would say
go ahead, Jen.
definitely.
Yeah.
That is the fostering of peer support and the shift in culture is one of the biggest things that our fellow talked about. She said all of her peers were super supportive. They all wanted to know what she was doing. They all wanted to know how they could get involved in it. So that one definitely. And Macy, I cut in, so I'll let you go ahead.
No, you're good. So I was thinking on that improved safety, security, and efficiency. So one of the things that, whether you agree or not, the state of Kansas does garnish wages. So one of the things there is a personally, like trying living in a red state, where a lot of times, education is not as a higher priority. One of the good things about the remote work situation, is that individuals are paid that livable wage. So then they pay taxes, they pay room and board, they are able to save money, they are able to, pay any of their fees that they might have. And so when we have people releasing, they're able to start either with a clean slate or with money in their accounts ready to go. And as like I said, as a state that leans very red, that can be a great talking point to advocate for. It's actually saving the state money because we're getting, all of those things. We're getting the fees back that they owe. We're getting their room and board back. Like we're getting all of those positive things that the state requires. And then with that, like when you have, these awesome opportunities, people aren't screwing around to like screw it up. Like Jen said, the resident that we had, like she was an awesome sounding board. And we went to her and we're like, okay, this is what you're seeing from your perspective. This is what we're seeing from our perspective. Like how is all of this working? Um, and so we were really able to kind of create that positive culture, and we were able to create those open line of communication, to make sure that, we were able to do this. And we asked our resident, to kind of give us an end of the year or the end of the time report about things, that popped up about, a CO said this to her. And so how should we have handled talking to the COs? And so we were able to really kind of pick her brain and then say like, okay, we want to continue this for women in the future. What would your recommendation be as someone who's leaving this program or as somebody who, had to be on the ground and kind of navigate the hard stuff with us? Like she had mentioned, she's like, oh, we had these COs say this to me and this to me. And I'm like, well, they shouldn't have said that. We told them this. And so then it really kind of opened up some like, oh, we need to handle this better within our own internal staff. Um, and it really increased the communication, I would say.
I love that. I'm wondering if we should shift over to some of the considerations and challenges, because I know we're going to handle or be thinking about that a lot with the Q&A portion.
Yeah.
So again, this is pre-populated with stuff that we raised in the report, eligibility in housing, network stability, and so on. Do these resonate with the two of you? And are there other challenges or concerns that you think would be important to add here?
I would say the big one was that financial management. Like, how do we bring in like the money to be able to pay them? How do we get it through our systems?
Yeah.
Luckily though, we have private industry within the DOC, and so it's not unheard of for us to bring in large checks for people. So that one was one we just need to get it set up between you guys or between the Alliance and KDOC. But if you don't have that private industry and those sorts of things, I could see where that would definitely be a big challenge. Jen, what do you think?
Yeah, especially if your state has wage requirements that
Mhm.
are lower than what the Alliance is wanting to pay. Definitely. The technology and internet access is going to be kind of a big one if you don't have a secure platform for your fellow or resident to be able to do the remote work from. Luckily, we already had one in place, so it was all good. Um, do you want me to talk any more about technology or?
Well, do you want to
Like I
talk
can
about
talk
more?
all day. This is literally my job.
Do you want to talk about more like we've kind of brainstormed some ideas for this next round of fellow. So we've kind of talked about like how because so one of the downfalls of our super secure technology is that it's super secure, which is a bonus because we let our students take their laptops with them all the time. So they take them back to their living units and things like that. And we wanted to create that model for the fellow, but we've realized that we can't have that like if we brought like had the Alliance send us a laptop for somebody to work on, we can't send that back to their living units. And so we have to kind of figure out a model to where we're able to let people work, let them use the technology, but not have it impede on what's happening. Um, so that's one of our struggles right now, if we're
Yeah.
going to be transparent, is how do we kind of find that balance between having somebody actually do their job, like using Google Docs, using all of those things that you guys need to do to really work, but then, meeting security needs. Um, so I've got some goals for the future, to try to create different things.
And
But yeah, that's a
you're raising
struggle.
such an important point. Like I'm thinking about in Maine, just, recently something that came up was the absolute tool that is LinkedIn. I mean, LinkedIn is a great way for people to start to
Mhm.
explore employment pathways. But there is a chat feature in LinkedIn, and it's not like, a super secure website by any means. And so, how do you balance providing, residents with access to a tool like LinkedIn, but also making sure that it doesn't become a liability? So,
Yeah.
let's see what this third frame is. Oh,
And how do you
tips.
get facility on board with allowing
Oh my gosh.
residents to use the technology?
Yeah, let's put that
That
in.
was a big one.
Facility buy-in.
Yes. And just being super transparent. We let them see all of the procedures and all of the things that our resident would be using, all of the software. We showed them everything and we laid everything out there for them. We said, yes, A, B, and C could happen. But so
This
just
sounds like you're
super
segueing into a
transparent.
tip, right?
Yes,
Right?
just
Did you just do that beautifully for me, Jen? What happened? Did I screw it up? Oh no. What
I
happened?
think you just clicked out of present, maybe.
I
Did you
did.
get out
I
of present mode?
think I did, but I'm gonna go back in. Yeah. Sorry, y'all. Here. Okay. Just getting a PhD in greatness today. All right. So that tip was right transparency, right?
transparency. Yep. We
Um,
met at the very beginning. We met with absolutely everyone at the facility that had anything to do with this resident unit team, counselors. We met with wardens,
mhm.
just about anyone and everyone that would have a hand in this Alliance fellowship. And we were just super transparent. We said, we're piloting this. There's going to be some hiccups. We'll readjust if we need to, and we were just super open with them.
I love it. Any other tips you'd want to share?
I mean, we also had a lot of transparency with the fellow. Like we had told her, like, look, this is gonna like there's gonna be breaches, there's gonna be stuff that comes up. Like you have to tell us because you're our guinea pig and we don't want this to go wrong. Like we don't want it to go bad. So like we need this to be able to work. And so we were honest and open with her too, like, hey, we need you. And she was really good. She understood kind of the need for the security. Like she saw both points of view. She saw our liability and she saw like us wanting to be able to like expand opportunities. And so she was really good about it. We were like the person that we selected as this fellow. She had worked in our central office as the receptionist. She would come in, and so we had a pretty good relationship with her. So we kind of knew, and she kind of knew how to work with us. But we were super kind of honest with her and said, hey, like you're our pilot, so if this doesn't go well, we could get it like it could get shut down pretty easily. Because it is, we like to say if you can do it in Kansas, you can do it anywhere. So
I have to say, start small. And I love that. You can do it in Kansas, you can do it anywhere. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing that. And I think we can move forward if you guys feel comfortable with um, maybe thinking about some of the questions that are popping up for folks about, how you guys did this work, how to do this work. So I just want to see if, it's a small group of us, if any of people in the room who have been listening to us yap want to ask any questions, or I also have some questions that I'd be happy to ask you that we thought might come up for folks. But I wanted to give Danielle, Max, and Isabella the chance to ask any questions that they might have. Nothing? I'm so surprised.
Danielle's coming off mute.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, I got a phone call and got pulled into legislative stuff, so now my brain is not
Not
in
here.
this. All right. I know I did have a question because of I like how you use the work release designation for remote learning, but unfortunately, the majority of our higher education programs are not at our pre-release centers, right? Like, so it's going to be harder to, and that's one of the issues with having them do anything offsite, right? Or even using this as that designation, is the majority of them are not work release eligible because they're either max or medium security. But I'm wondering if we get them to say, okay, work release to leave the facility right? But if it's a remote, then it can be, I don't know, I would have to just figure that out because ours is the same way. It's set up the same way with work release. And um, the other question that I had, we've been looking at trying to figure out how to do this, but like how to do it with technology and the limitations there. I think I have figured out how to do it, but the problem is that they don't have access to the same platform in their housing unit as like in education, right? So they, if they were going to do this, we have internships already. The colleges do work-based internship programs, like for graduates of the program can do an internship, or even their last year, they can do paid internships. But it's the work piece, right? Because I want to make sure that, because the college is paying them a stipend to do the internship. So it's like on top of what they're getting paid, and we do it as an award. So it's like a special payment.
called
But
incentive pay. Yeah, we call it incentive
exactly,
pay.
Yeah, yeah.
exactly. But if we did it as an actual like work base, then that would be their actual pay, right?
Yeah, yeah. And
Right
that's
So
how
we'd
now,
we
have to
do it.
figure out who's paying that. Like, I'm assuming the company that is
Yeah.
hiring them
Yeah,
would
yeah.
pay that,
So
right?
so how we do it is I think officially KDOC pays it first and then they send the bill to the company or whomever and they reimburse them is generally how that works. Um and so it goes into their account. One of the things that if they are that work release eligible, they are actually able to get a like real bank account. And so they like that's where our fellows like money would go was to her actual bank account, which then downfall of that she doesn't have access to it while she's incarcerated. But she worked for the Alliance for 6 months and then she released. So she was releasing right at the end of her fellowship anyways. So that's how we kind of had set it up. I know we have a way to do it where it can go to like their regular DOC account. We do have forced savings and all of those sorts of things as well. Because that's how we have private industry and we have people making anywhere from like 13 to 20 some bucks an hour. And so it goes into their regular accounts.
Danielle, remind me, do your residents that are in education, do they live in a separate pod
Depends on the
facility?
security level in the facility, and how the warden decides just to set up. And it also, like, some of them, yes, because we have staffing issues in some portions of
Mhm.
the state, so they put them all in one housing unit, and then it makes it a lot easier, right? And we wouldn't, other ones, they're all in different places. One of the reasons why we went away from housing them all in the same area is because when we have like lockdowns or shutdowns or something like that, if we have a shutdown of that housing unit for a reason, nobody can come to school, right? But if they're at six different housing units and they're that one housing unit shut down, at least the other ones can come to school. So,
So they could
yeah,
potentially come over to education if they were to get an internship or potentially
yeah,
have
that's what
that.
I'm thinking is that if they would get a remote-based intern or job or whatever, we could have them say, okay, you're going to come, that your place to come to work is down in the education department, right? And we just set them up there since we already have the technology and the ability to do it there. Plus, it would be more private than just being a housing unit trying to do it too. Um, yeah, that would probably be the best because we have the origins all through all of our schools, whereas
Mhm.
Viabas we don't they don't have an LMS system or anything like that, or it's harder with Viabat to do anything on the housing unit. So it
Do
would be
you
harder to do it.
do your origin tablets just work in education, like in your education areas,
The
or do they work?
laptops and the tablets, yeah, they are just because of the two vendor issue. Though we are currently in talks with Origin and Viapath to put the Origin software on Viapath tablets. So for a cost. So then that way they can actually access the LMS and everything from Origin and everything that they would have in the education um, on the housing unit. So then in that case, once we get to that point, they'll be able to do that. Um, so
Yeah,
yeah,
I could
it's
definitely see it working for you.
Yeah,
This
it feels
type
like
of,
you're so close
yes,
because I feel like
yeah.
in Maine, when I was referring to it earlier, when Lali started out working with me, he would go to the area because that's where they had access. And I remember us working together from there. And they have earned living units in Maine. So they have housing units where there is a lot more privileges and people are able to work and so on and so forth. But he wasn't in those units at the time. And so that was how it started out. And then Maine really expanded their technology in Maine State Prison. But like you're saying, it in different facilities in Maine, there's a different level of technology access and even what's possible because some of those buildings are very old and spread out, and Maine is very rural, as Kansas is, I know as well. So there's a lot of obstacles and hurdles, but I think it it was definitely something that it was like, well, this is the one way we can do it, so we're going to try it this way. And he would go to the education rooms, and I remember like, which room would he be in today? And it was a beautiful experience seeing that sort of build out in real time in front of my eyes in Maine State Prison. I wanted to give Maxwell and Isabella a chance to ask a question if they wanted to. Otherwise, I was going to ask you guys a few questions that we had prepared. Did you either of you want to ask anything?
I'll certainly say hello and kind of thread in some of the barriers we're navigating and see
Great.
if our thoughtful panelists have any sort of thoughts about them. But we come from a really kind of different perspective. And I'm Maxwell Schnur, and I'm the chair of the communication department at Cal Poly Humboldt. And we run a BA program at Pelican Bay State Prison at the highest security level, at level 4, which is part of why I was asking about, the notion of our administrator or even, allowing someone to stroll out of the institution is just a zero possibility. And we have two students from our program, one who's paroled and one who has gone to supervised release. And the supervised release student was able to get meaningful employment. He's doing immigration attorney support. But the daydream of us to be able to have a meaningful job for some of our students who are some exceptional college seniors is kind of the real stakes of this. And the existence of the Maine and the Kansas programs as things for us to point to about the possibility are really valuable. So the work rings out in our conversations with administration and with the warden and things like that. But because of the security concerns, it's really, really hard to make those connections. And so that's a lot of the work we're sort of having right now. We had a great conversation with one of the state employees in Maine who provided us with all of their risk management documentation. Like everybody's really helpful. And so I think the main thing is for us not meaning to play on the main part, but um, our primary barriers are um, the security pieces and the entwined threads that y'all are naming about housing access, about access to um, the access to the laptop or a tablet that, like one of the suggestions you already made, I wrote down, we've got a big shared notes document going, that the laptop remain in the education space, locked in a cabinet where the student could come and do work in a supervised space. And that already, so having that vocabulary of possible ways it could work and listening to what y'all have to say has been really fruitful for us from the beginning. And so I think that's really, I don't, the questions I've been having, I've just been spamming the chat with. So, but I'll say thanks again to both of our speakers today for all your help, and the guidance that you give. So,
I'm so
And
glad. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
we gave our resident all of the access. You could definitely do this a little bit more lockdown if you wanted to. Like you got the Alliance would have been perfectly fine with Blackboard and putting materials in Blackboard for her to look at and comment on and assignments and things like that. But we wanted her to have a really robust experience, and so we gave her more access. But I think you could definitely pare it down and make it as secure as you needed to.
Yeah, I would agree with Jen. I think so, like I said, right now we're operating in that like minimum custody range. And so once we kind of get it under that minimum custody range, then I think I would like to keep expanding and figuring out like how do we go up the custody levels and still be able to do everything that we need to do. It's just easier to sell it when you go low first and then move your way up. But I think, I mean, eventually my pie in the sky dream is that we're gonna write a grant and we're gonna get a trailer, and or like a building or something, and be able to put cubicles in there and then make a remote work environment for people, and we have it all locked into like one area, so then we can control the internet in that one area. You wouldn't have laptops and things like that, but you'd have a workstation just like you do it everywhere else, and you'd sit there, you'd work your, however many hours you work, and then, it might be a shared desk situation to where you get your own little locked cubby or kind of whatever the case may be. But that's my dream is that we have one on the minimum side. And then I would like to put one on the medium max side of our women's facility as well. So then that like for those lifers and those ladies who have a lot of that really strong leadership, I want to give them opportunities so that we can kind of really work on the culture. We only have one women's facility within the Kansas, and so luckily we've got a really awesome warden there, and so she lets us try things that maybe wouldn't work in other facilities, and they run a very tight ship at the women's one, so they're always like letting us try new things because they don't have as many of the other problems that our other facilities do. So that's my pie in the sky dream is that someday we will be able to build those facilities, or like I said, I'll bring in a trailer house if we have to and just see whatever we can do to try to expand that. So
Yeah,
if anyone helps me write a grant, I would
I'll
I
help
can
you write
send
that
some
grant,
help.
Macy. That's amazing. It's like a dream. I know. I think the operative word too is try. And I think it can be really hard, in a corrections context to talk about trying things because, there's so much on the line, for
Yeah.
corrections. And one thing that I really respect about what the two of you have been saying about, you're like, well, Blackboard, we didn't end up doing it, but we were ready to, it's like, well, um, if we're gonna fail, fail quick. And I think, I hope the Maine DOC wouldn't mind me saying this, but I do think there was a lot of, Maine gets a lot of props for having leadership in this area, but they failed a lot too. There's a lot of things that they tried. It didn't work. There was, some things that were like, whoops, that wasn't great. That was, someone getting yelled at. And these are the things that I think, we keep coming back to and thinking about and saying, well, we really learned from this. And I love the idea of a place like Pelican Bay. Even thinking about it, I think about the early days with Lali of being on the phone with him, and he was my graduate assistant. He was doing work over the phone. And it's so crazy. I mean, that was 2020. It's so crazy for me to think about that now. But he really was ready to contribute. And like you said, Max, there are people in Pelican Bay that have so much to contribute and can do some meaningful work. And so how do we, create the things that we can try and feel safe about it and just try it and see, like, with one or two individuals who are ready to do that. Yes, they are shining in a really difficult yard. I'm glad you said that. So, yeah. So I don't know. Would it be okay for me to ask the two of you a couple questions? And
Yeah.
feel free, Isabella, Max, or Danielle, if you want to.
And Max, feel free to reach out if you
Mhm.
have questions or need help pushing the needle in we're happy to talk about our experience in technology and what we've done in Kansas to whomever needs to hear it.
One of the things I will say before Mara like switches us over, we've started doing that best interest determination. We've started collecting the data for that. And I will say that has been a great help. Like it's a lot of work and we do it we're starting to do it every semester, but that data is now Jen and I gave it to the governor's office just the other day because she was trying to advocate for not changing Pell. And so like just having that proof of what's happening in your program. So like in the fall, we had 25% of our students out of our 600 students who made the dean's list or honors roll or whatever you call it. And so just having that information to be like, no, look, like these students are kicking butt and taking names. Like, look at this information. So that's something like whatever you can do, numbers talk whenever you're in those like at least that's in my experience, that seems the best way to like point and like show logically like, hey, look, this is how many people we're helping, this is how many like made whatever. I like logical steps, and so that helps like have some actual validity to your argument, not just the emotion, like because we all passionate about this. And so it's not just my emotion of, oh, these are Macy's opinions. Like I can actually prove that we're kicking butt and taking names. So I would highly recommend that to because you've got awesome students. So figure out ways like to be able to share their stories in a logical way.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, so one of the biggest things that I know comes up when corrections departments think about trying something new is how is this going to impact staff? We
Yep.
already have staff that are doing more with less and doing the most. And so I guess what I'm curious from you folks is, how has doing this sort of trial run with Amy, our fellow that has been working at the Alliance, how has that affected staff capacity? Has it affected it? Can you see there being, impact on it? I'm just curious about what your experience has been.
It really hasn't so much for us. Luckily, we have a great person at our Topeka facility. She's our job readiness lady, and she stepped up and said, I am willing to take this project on. I want to do whatever I can to make it work. And so she kind of took Amy under her wing and was there with her during her meetings and helped her, connect to internet when she needed to. She was kind of just that person that Amy could go to whenever she needed help or anything like connection was not good. So we were lucky to have someone that just kind of stepped up and said, I'll be that person.
Amazing.
That's
Yeah.
that's one of the issues with rolling this out large scale is because we had one-on-one supervision for Amy the whole time we had it. And we're probably going to have to do that model again for our next person who's coming on. And so that's where like my trailer idea is coming into play because then we like could make it in a secure environment to where you meet XYZ custody levels, XYZ rules, and so then we don't have to have as much supervision.
Yes.
We can't just have somebody walking around with an open laptop like that. That would definitely make my warden cringe a little bit, and freak him out. And so like that's one of our biggest hurdles with trying to roll this out large scale is how do we get access? How do we have supervision? But we don't have enough manpower to go one-on-one. And so I think that's honestly one of the things I think that's slowing us down from going bigger scale is trying to manage that part of it.
The staffing. Yeah, go ahead, Danielle.
So did you guys do the remote based work? And if so, or just the internship stuff? And if you did the remote based work, what kind of employers were you working with that were?
Alliance was
Oh,
our
okay. So you
employer.
did.
We had a fellow. Yes, she was a
Okay.
fellow with the Alliance, and it was based work.
Okay.
Yeah, so she worked on like documents and helped to author things, and I think she did a lot of it. Sounds like a lot of what Victoria did. Like it sounds like she worked on a lot of different stuff like that. So she had an email, she had access to Google Suites. She had access. Basically, she had essentially open internet, which is why we had to have somebody there with her one-on-one all the time. The hard thing is like I know Amy was researching different things, and so it was hard to like whitelist.
Yeah.
One of our thoughts was if you could run it through JSTOR, like if they could research, like we were gonna allow like the research through EBSCO or JSTOR or one of those platforms that we already have, so then it's in a secure platform. Um, that was essentially like when we were talking about running it through Blackboard and our Atlo laptops, then we were going to also provide access to EBSCO. So then she could research through EBSCO and do all of that. The problem became she couldn't real time work on any of like the shared docs or anything like that. Um, that was, and then, if you're using Origin, do they have virtual classroom on? Do you have those? So then you could zoom through that virtual classroom potentially, so Atlo doesn't have the cameras turned on, so we couldn't do
Uh,
that part of it.
oh, okay.
There's
Yeah, that's
definitely
how we do our college
workarounds.
classes is through the Origin
Yeah.
LMS. Yeah.
Do you
There's
do them on the
definitely
tablets or did you say
workarounds.
you did them on the laptops? I'm just curious.
The colleges have laptops. Our GD and occupational have tablets.
That's what we have.
Cool. Sorry, Jen, what were you gonna say?
I said that's what we have, but there's definitely workarounds.
Yeah. I'm
We're
wondering, Maria, are you familiar with any like, employers, like even national type employers that are interested in doing this type of work?
That are working, having remote workers that are incarcerated. Yeah. So I know that like one of the employers that we've been talking to a lot, the why am I blanking on the name of it? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, exactly.
Help me out.
So that would be good if there was like a
They
list
they
of.
employ people in Maine.
I was actually going to say, if you want to jump into the employers room, we actually do have
Oh,
Haley Chopin there from Unlocked
thank
Labs,
you.
who
Unlocked
is
Labs. Oh my
Uh-huh.
God.
our
I
organization
wanted to say
has
like Unbounded, and that's was such a brain fart. But yeah, Unlocked Labs is a national.
Unlocked Labs. They've hired multiple residents within the main system as like full-time salaried software development and coding
Yeah.
positions.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And then the
they
other
know
one,
all the ins and outs of that.
the other one that I was thinking of is Darlene Green, who's she's not a national employer, but she's working as a remote employee, full-time employee, with a healthcare organization in Maine, and she does grant management. And
Sean,
Can
I
you
put them all in the
jump?
chat.
Can you jump to other?
You can.
You
Okay.
absolutely
Breakout room.
can.
You go to breakout rooms
Not
and
that I
choose a
don't love
breakout
you
room.
guys. I see you enough, Jennifer, Macy.
Thank you
Yeah,
for
you
coming.
talk to us all the time, so it's fine.
Danielle's
Yeah.
got to go chase opportunity.
Right,
Yeah.
right. All right. Thanks, guys.